All right, everybody. Hello and welcome. Today we're going to be talking about our sound and how to kind of play around with the contact point and the weight and the speed to really get a beautiful sound out of your instrument. So, some instruments like a harp, for example, it's really easy to make a beautiful sound. You just pluck the string, but the way that you pluck it can kind of affect the way that it resonates. But relatively easy to make a nice reverberating, open, gorgeous, pleasant sound. And it's a little a little bit harder on a stringed instrument. So what we're going to start out with, and this might turn into a longer series, I'm not really sure, but we can elaborate and go into details more if you'd like in the future. But we're going to start out with our normal contact point, which might be just somewhere in the middle. By the way, every instrument is different, and so your middle might not really look like my middle. My viola has a really small little area right here as far as violas go. A lot of times violas have a really wide space between the bridge and the fingerboard, but mine's a little bit smaller. So when I'm playing over the fingerboard, I can kind of get away with really playing over the fingerboard. And when I'm in the middle, I'm still kind of closer to the fingerboard. And when I'm on the bridge, it's not necessarily right at the bridge. So you'll kind of have to see where your contact points are. But we can think of middle, fingerboard, and bridge. Those are going to be the three that we kind of play around with today. So let's start in the middle, and I'm going to just put the bow on the string. We're always going to try and start from the string. So see if you can get a few really nice, clear sounds to begin with. Just listen to begin with. From the string. And just pretend that you're flinging the sound out into the room and it reverberates so beautifully. So I can make it reverberate even more by stepping on the bow speed versus kind of slowing it down. It still reverberates, but I'm not starting from the string. Can you hear? Let me start from the string. You can really get a lovely resounding sound. So that would be the step one. Can you simply do this a few times in a row and listen to the beautiful resonance in your space? And by the way, you could try that on every string. It might be a little bit different on the E string or the A string or your top string versus your lowest string. So that would be step one. The next thing is, if you can do that, see if you can continue that beautiful resonant sound all the way through the bow and coming back. So let's see, I'm going to step back a little bit. Sometimes we can get little wrinkles in the sound. I'll try and see if I can do that. Did you hear the kind of sound that was in there, the little wrinkles that are in there? So what I'm going to try to do is start in the middle of my exhale. And I'm still getting a little jumpiness in there, so I'm going to just maybe go a little faster with the bow speed. And they kind of go away at a certain bow speed if I go slower. Well, there weren't any that time, but sometimes, when we slow down the bow speed, we feel like we have to control it more, and other things can kind of happen. There's probably lots of reasons why we get little wrinkles in the sound, but that's neither here nor there. We really just want to focus on getting a beautiful, resonant, gorgeous sound, just like you did with those initial little test strokes. I'm going to try a little faster. Sound a little faster. If I add more weight, this is what it'll sound like. So it sounds a little squished if I ease up. It sounds a little little bit more pleasant. So those little nuances are the things I'm kind of talking about. That's the middle contact point. So if we change it up and we go to the bridge, let's go to the bridge next. Let's see how those weight, speed, contact point things can kind of affect the sound quality at the bridge. So I'm going to go back to my little tiny test strokes. And when we're at the bridge, the string tension is tighter. It's a little more relaxed as you go down towards the fingerboard. But if I'm really at the bridge, it's like the string is like this, and you need you need a slow, kind of heavier bow stroke to kind of pull the string. It's like a tightly wung string, you know. So I'm gonna put the bow closer to the bridge, and I'm gonna play around with the contact point at the bridge. So just because I'm at the bridge doesn't mean that that's the sweet spot for the bridge area. I'm going to play with it a little bit. So the first one might be kind of crunchy. Who knows? Starting from the string. You see him? So it's a really finicky place to play, but we're going to try and get 5 in a row, so I'm going to pick a spot. I know that I'm going to go a little slower and a little heavier than I was in the middle. If I go faster, and I don't have enough weight, sorry for the noise. So there's those little nuances between that relationship of the contact point, the weight and the speed, basically. So I'm sure you've noticed that too. So let's go for the slower bow speed and a little bit heavier weight. I'm gonna start to see how slow I can tolerate at this weight. And then the quality of the sound that I'm getting. Let's take a listen. Does it sound nice? It sounds a little bit tight and squished. So I'm gonna try and play around until I get a sound that I really like the sound of. See, I'm not the greatest musician out there. There's probably so many other videos there you can really start to see amazing players that you can watch and see the kind of sound that they're getting in certain areas. But I just want to demonstrate that there's different qualities of sound that you can get in those areas, and I'd really love for you to try out what you have to do to play in those particular contact points so that you can understand how to change your sound better. And the more you understand about that relationship between the weight, the speed, and the contact point, the more you're able to manipulate it and ultimately, hopefully, play with a really beautiful sound. So the moral of the story, this is the best I can do for the moment at the bridge. Little wrinkle there. And it's a lot brighter kind of sound. So I'm trying to hear the resonance of the sound in the room. I'm going to change and go to the fingerboard. So the fingerboard also has that little range of area that I'm going to play around with too. And so I'm going to start with my little tiny test strokes to see if I can find where I want to be. Did you hear that? So it kind of sounds better on my instrument right about there with this particular weight and speed that I have. You can see I'm also tilting the bow more on the side versus having flat hair. You can play with flat hair there, but it's a little more bouncy. Can you notice that? And maybe that's just due to my playing, but it's a lot easier if you just tilt the bow on the side. And it's really hard to play quietly because it takes so much control. So you can see, since I have less hair on the string and I'm trying to hold some of the weight off the string, that's something I have to control. But I'm also kind of playing a little slower too. If I step on the gas, let's see what happens. It also sounds really lovely, so I'm going to try and use the whole bow. And it's really hard to not bounce when you use the whole bow when you're playing at the fingerboard, and so typically we try to avoid going all the way back to the frog. So we'd maybe try hanging out in the upper part of the bow when you have to play quietly or over the fingerboard. If I go too low. So let's see how quiet I can play with a still nice tone. So I'm really rotating the stick so that I'm really playing with hardly any hair at all, because I do need some speed to really have a nice resonant sound so that the string vibrates nicely. But if I add too many hairs, it gets a little bit louder. It's a little easier to play on the side of the hair, but one should be able to do both. Let's do the flat hair too. Really quiet with the flat hair. I have to move the bow a lot slower. So anyway, so many things to think about. Isn't there so many things that one can think about? So perhaps we can think of this as like a little intro video, just realizing that there's different ways that you have to move the bow when you're in different contact points and if you want to get different dynamics. But ultimately, no matter what dynamic you're at and what contact point you're at, you really want to play with a really pleasant, enjoyable sound. So we have to figure out some of the ways that we have to move the bow with the weight, the speed, and the contact point in order to really get a nice sound. And every instrument is similar, but also different. So anyway, I hope that this is interesting to you. And if you practice with these ideas this week, maybe just explore doing those little test strokes at the middle, the frog, I'm sorry, not the frog, the bridge, or the fingerboard, and see if you can get a really nice sound a few times in a row. And then the following week, you could try and add the whole bow and see if you can sustain the whole bow with a really beautiful resonant sound, just that same beautiful sound that you were getting on your little test strokes. And from there, then you can maybe start to do some nuance with dynamics and more quality control things. But anyway, these are some thoughts about sound and your tone. And I hope you learned something and weren't too confused by this video. And I'll see you all very soon. Thanks for being here today.